Stair fascia is one of the trickiest installs on any deck. The angles are different, the corners are tighter, and every cut has to line up perfectly. After 35 years, here's the process I use to make it look clean every time. Here's the set of stairs we're working on today. This is 8 rises, 5 stringers, and it transitions from a landing up top to another landing intermediately, and then another set of stairs, and then another landing, and then another set of stairs after that. If you guys want to learn how to frame a set of stairs, click the link below on how to build a staircase. This is actually a new product called Owens Corning. It's structural composite lumber. It works great for this application. I do my stair trims and my fascia. Fascia is just basically where you're covering something, you're making it look pretty, you're covering up the framing. Even though this framing is black and that's my favorite color, it still, in my opinion, needs to be covered because there's exposed end grains and end cuts, and there's things that I don't want to see when I'm done with this stair set. I like to trim the sides of my stairs first and then put my stair treads inside of that trim and then put the stair nosing, fascia. The way I do it is my style. And I build it this way because it's gonna last a long time. I like to have all my end grains covered. Even if there's a nice nosing on the end of it, some jurisdictions require a tread nosing to stick out past the riser. If you're over 11 inches where I live, it is not required by code. It's the trickiest part of the build. It's the hardest thing we do. And there's a couple angles that you gotta figure out so you know, and I'm gonna give you the formula on how to do that to make it a little bit easier for you. Okay, so I'm just gonna draw a quick sample of what we're up to today. So here's our upper landing, and it's small, it's only like 3 feet. And then we have our set of stairs that are coming down to another landing, and then this landing down here. And then these stairs continue and so forth. The whole concept here is we wanna cap off all of this existing black framing with matching materials that we're using for the floor and the upper deck and all that. Normally I would say, okay, let's make this whole piece a piece of fascia. So we have to come up with a miter right here, and then we're gonna come up with another miter down here. The formula for me, what I figured out is for the upper angle, you figure out what your angle is for the staircase and you divide that in half. So this staircase is 33 degrees. Okay, so we gotta figure out what this angle is and what this angle is. We know that our staircase is 33 degrees. So to figure out this top angle, we take the angle of the staircase and we divide it in half. So each side of this gets a 16.5 degree angle. But because this is a longer piece of material and it could contract, we're gonna make a smaller piece with an expansion joint right here so that this miter never falls apart. This will look nicer in the next 10 years than if we try to make this a full piece and then this separates. So we're trying to keep this from separating. So we're gonna make this in a smaller piece, and then we'll just put a square piece in at the end when we're finished to make it look nice. So we figured out the top piece. Now the bottom piece is a little bit different. The formula for that is you take your stair angle, you subtract it from 90 degrees, because 90 degrees is a right angle, and you get 57. Then you take 57 degrees and you divide it in half, and this becomes the angle here, which is 28.5. The reason it is different down here than up here is because this is coming in at plumb or level or at 0, and then you're going into an angle. This piece, you're coming into an angle, and then you're diving down, and you want this spot right here to be as plumb as possible. So this is rough math, but it should get us close. If this piece is 1 degree off, I don't think anybody is gonna come back and say, hey doctor, you're 1 degree out. So now I know what my angles are. So now all I have to do is figure out what length I need this part to be. And that's a little bit trickier. That's gonna involve some clamps and a little bit of time to figure out. The cool thing is, I could go ahead and get the top piece made. And then once I get the bottom piece figured out, then I can duplicate it for the other side of the staircase. It just has to be done on reverse angles because this product we're using is faced one way. So your stairs look kind of like this from the inside of this piece we're making, right? But actually the staircase sticks down past this piece of trim because this piece is only 7.5 inches. So we're gonna add another piece below this to fully cover all of the staircase. The most important part and the hardest part and the most time-consuming part is making this piece right here. Once we got that figured out, then the rest of this becomes a little bit easier, and you're just duplicating your angles on right and left. Now, the cool thing about this particular set of stairs, every single rise, every single run, they're exactly the same on every staircase. So even though there's different amounts of stairs, my angles should be able to be duplicated for each set of stairs, so that as long as I remember these angles or write them down, then I'll know that I'm in the right zone. My piece of fascia, it's gonna be a certain length. Now, I know that my piece of fascia is gonna stick out a little bit past that top angle, so I'm gonna go ahead and just make it a little too long to start. I know I need to stick out past this last kicker 2 inches, because I have an inch of fascia, and then I wanna have my trim piece stick out a little bit further than that. So I'm just gonna make this piece 115 inches long, and I'm not gonna worry about the bottom of the run yet. We'll cut that back once we clamp this in place and we're happy with how high it is and where it's fitting on the staircase. Let's get 115, and that's from the top of our trim to the bottom. So we're not worried about the bottom, but the top piece, we wanna cut it at that 16.5-degree angle. And then I gotta make the return piece. Remember we were talking about how the top has a piece for an expansion, or mostly a contraction joint. If I don't make this contraction joint, then when these two pieces come together, it's gonna try to separate right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and make a contraction joint a few inches back. But I wanna be able to make sure I can attach it to the side of my landing as well. So I'm gonna probably make that piece maybe 6 inches at the top. We'll figure that out once we get it up on the saw. All right, so this is my first piece of fascia. The reason we're using this is because it's wide, it's 7.25 inches. They don't make a deck board wider than this, so we're starting with this nice thick piece to start our run, and then we're gonna put a thinner piece, but still be able to use our Cortex fasteners on it. This is gonna be where we need to put the angle in the board. So I'm gonna measure back 115 inches, and then I have to cut my angle back on a 16.5-degree angle. So this board will go back this way at 16.5. So there's about a 16.5-degree angle. I'll go ahead and cut this. So there's our top angle of our staircase. The landing is gonna go back at this angle. So we need to make our return piece. We're gonna connect these two together. Since the saw is already on a 16.5-degree angle, I'm gonna flip this board over, and I'm gonna cut another 16.5-degree angle that's gonna mate up with this right here. You could easily have also just turned the saw this way to 16.5, locked it in, and made the same exact cut. I'm just speeding up the process a little bit. Here's our return piece. Again, I only want 6 inches of this. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut a square cut at 6. Okay, there's our return. So now what we need to do is glue this together like so. Now we can normally just run some glue and activator on this, but we're gonna run a couple of Craig jig screws at certain points in the bottom on the back side, so it'll hold this together, and we're gonna glue it up so that this thing stays good for a long time. Once this is glued together and locked in, we'll take it back over to the staircase and we'll mock it up, and then we'll figure out where we're going to put the bottom part of the trim on this stair fascia. Before I put these parts together, I like to break the edges of everything, so it just gives us a little bit of flexibility on if things aren't 100% lined up perfectly. It adjusts the thicknesses sometimes. One piece might be a little thicker than the other or something like that. So I'm just gonna take this rasp and kind of go like this. Now, because both sides of part of this will be seen, I'm going to file these edges on both sides. This side will not be seen. This side will. And then I'm gonna go ahead and file this side too. Now, let's talk about exposure. I'm covering my landing with this piece. This piece is covering the stairs, but the landing will come in probably somewhere to about here, and then it's gonna go down like this, and then it's gonna return back this way. This much of this board will be sticking out past the landing. Now there's gonna be an inch of fascia that will also cover this, probably somewhere into here, okay? So this is our fascia piece that's gonna come across and cover the front of this rise of the first tread because the staircase goes down like this and down and across and down. This part is partially hanging out in the air for now, and then this part will be installed to the landing because the landing goes back this way. So all this gets pretty much a place where I can put screws. But right here, I cannot put any screws, not until I have a piece of fascia, and some of it still may not be able to fasten. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna pocket screw into this to hold this together, and I'm gonna use some glue and activator to make sure it sticks really well. If I put the pocket screw too high, you may end up seeing it in here. So I wanna keep them kind of low in this piece where I'm protected. So I'm gonna go ahead and put them like no more than 3 inches high, maybe 4 inches. Put one at 4, put one at like an inch down here. And then I could put one right here as well, but this is kind of auxiliary support just to try to help things stay together. So I don't think I'm gonna worry too much about these extra parts. This is a Craig jig, as it's like a pocket screw. So it comes with specific length screws and a little clamp and a drill bit that drills things to depth at a steep angle, like so. So I'm pre-drilling in a hole that this screw will fit into, and it will suck together to this part so that it helps keep things together in a concealed fashion where you don't see these. But you have to do this from the back side of the board. You can't do it from the front side or else you'll destroy it. On the side of this jig, there's a depth for your board thickness. So we have to adjust that to, our board thickness is 1 inch. So we need to lock this in at 1 inch like so we don't over drill the hole. So now when I put this bit in here, it's not going all the way to the bottom of the board and blowing out the front side. It's at the proper depth. So that's locked in. And then what'll happen is I put these marks on our board, right? I'll line up my line with this line where I want a hole to be drilled, and then I'll lock this in. So I've already got this kind of set to this thickness of decking because that's all I ever use this for. So now this is locked in place. Now all I have to do is hook this up to a drill and drill this hole. Then I'll drill one more hole for the other hole I want to, where I want to put a fastener. And then I'll pull this off and you'll see what it does. I just want to make sure that this hole is not seen from the inside of the staircase once it's all assembled. That's why I kind of pulled it back so it doesn't hit that line. And now I'll do the same thing down here on this side. So there's our 2 holes. These screws go in here and then they screw into the adjoining piece like so. And that's what helps keep this thing from being loose. If I put a Craig jig hole here, you very well may see it, but I think with glue and 2 screws, we're gonna be just fine. The screws are a specific length. If you use too long of a screw, you can blow out the back side of this and then you'd have to throw this piece away and start over. I'm just gonna put some glue on this side, and then I'm just gonna spray activator after I have the pieces assembled, so I don't make such a mess with this product. This is called Instant Bond, and it's a PVC adhesive. I prefer that this doesn't blow out through the face of the piece, so I'm gonna drag it to the back a little bit like so. Now if I wanted to, I could spray a little bit of accelerator. Once these 2 pieces get together, they're gonna wanna stick. So I'm gonna go with the tip first where I want it, and then I'm gonna bring these 2 together. That glue's gonna activate and bond very quickly. Now that we have that, we can take our Craig jig screws like that. Now be careful because you can overdo it. Okay, that's a pretty good miter. Let's flip it over and take a look at it. That looks great. There's just a slight elevation issue. That's why, remember what we did with the file, rasp, just so it still looks good, even though there's just a slight variation. Nobody's gonna notice that. So now here's our landing that comes across here. There's our angle. So let's take this over to the staircase and kind of mock it up so we can figure out what to do with the bottom of this trim set. Once we have that figured out, then we will duplicate this for the other side of the stairs, and we'll know what length to make it because we just figured it out on this side. It's pretty good. So now we've mocked up this piece, and I realized that we're off a little bit on our angles. Even though the math was mathing, it doesn't matter because this particular landing may be out of level a little bit, which it is. This board is tilting back towards this way a little bit. So what's happened is this tip looks a little high, but what I'm really mostly concerned about is how plumb this line is right here. So when I put my square up to it, there's a gap right on top. If I move this, it's about 1 degree off. So what I did was, to mock this up, we went 1 3/4 above the tread nosing, like so. We're not measuring this way, we're measuring at a 90-degree angle to our board. And I pull it up 1 3/4. Now you're asking, why did you do that? Well, the way we trim our stairs, once this board's installed, then we put down our decking onto our stair tread, and then we wrap the face of the tread. What that does is, when these two boards are installed and put together, I want to make sure that this trim supersedes this one and looks really nice, right? So what we did was, we brought it up. If you bring it up 1.5 inches, you're really pushing this nosing a little bit. So I like to come up 1 3/4 inches. I don't like to go up a whole lot higher than that, because you're really bringing this board up out of its element, and it could become flexible that way. But because of Cortex screws and stainless steel fasteners, we're not gonna pepper this, but we're gonna put an ample amount of screws in it once we have this figured out, so we know that this board is not gonna move. Because once we lock it to the side of the staircase, it's gonna become very rigid. And then if I wanted to, I could add additional screws into the side of this board once it's installed, like so. But this is what you don't want to see. And I've done this in the past, and I've had to redo it. I put this board too low, and then you have this look, and that's ugly. We don't want that. So we want it all contained within the staircase like that. So that's what I'm shooting for. That's every step. So 1 3/4 inches gives you that 1/4 inch to play. You just want to make sure that you're keeping this first piece of trim at least 1 3/4 inches up. We recut this at a 17-degree angle, which is only 1/2 degree per side, but that gave us a nice square edge here. It made this top look really nice and flat. So now this side is perfect. So now I'm comfortable with that. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark the inside of one of these rises, because I kind of know where it needs to be. So it just gives me a reference point. So I just mark the inside of one rise, so I can kind of know that when I put this back in place, and I might go ahead and mark back here as well, that's where this goes. Now I got to figure out the downstairs side of the trim. So that's what we're gonna do next. So what we're making is this part right here. That's going to make it look good when this comes down. So what we have to do is, we have our 1 3/4 inch distance from the nosing right here, and we want to make sure that we have 2 inches of clearance from the nosing of the bottom tread. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of mark that at 2 inches. Now I want to bring that mark all the way up to the top of the trim piece. So that's where our miter is going to start. So this is going to be the length of this piece, is this mark. And then it's going to go back 28.5, because remember earlier we figured out the stair angle and we divided it in half, and it's 28.5 degrees on this piece and on the piece going down. We're gonna cut this piece at 28.5 degrees, somewhere in there. That's where this piece is gonna get marked and cut. And then we're gonna put a down piece. We're gonna go make that next. We're gonna cut that at this height right here. So the elevation of this piece should be in the neighborhood, if I measure down to the deck, 7 1/4. That's the height of this small little piece. We're gonna go cut all that, glue it up, bring it back, and see where we land. We have the piece in place, and I just wanna check plumb. Ooh, that looks really good. So we have the right distance away from our nosing, because remember, we're gonna have 1 inch of fascia here, and then we have 1 inch of reveal. So this looks nice. I can go ahead and install this side of the fascia. So I'm gonna put a screw basically on every leading edge of where the stairs are into this board here. And I'm gonna put it pretty close to the top, but because it's composite, it's not gonna have an issue with that. It's not gonna split. And then I'll take a 90-degree angle down, and I'll put another screw right here. And that's what's really gonna hold this thing together. And then I can add auxiliary screws as I want in different locations. So I could put another screw right here. It'd have to be pretty low to kind of hold this base in. That's nice and tight. I just have to finish the bottom screw on this side, and then that fascia is good until we're finished. And then we may add a couple more screws if we feel it needs it. All right, so we have our fascia piece in, it's nice and solid, but now we need to cover this. So I gotta make a part to face this off, and what it is, it's a piece of TimberTech AZEK stair riser. So this piece is gonna come down like this, it's gonna go back this way to whatever depth I decide to make it, and up this and up underneath that. To complete that, we are also putting a piece of fascia on the landing up above. Same angles. What I'll do is I'll cut it out, I'll rip it down, and then I'll probably make it just a little bit long so I can check the angles and see if they all fit properly, and then I can make adjustments at that point, just like I did when I made this. Once that's done, I can cut it to its final length, clamp it up, and get it installed. I'll just leave it full width. You have to slip it. To figure out the angle of the bottom part of the second piece of fascia, I know that the staircase is at a 34-degree angle, so I just cut this base piece at 34 degrees, and then the opposing side of 34 is 56. If you subtract 34 from 90, you get 56. So that's what I cut the bottom of the trim piece at. And then the upper piece, I also cut at 56 degrees. And then I notched it at 3 1/4 because that's the size of the piece of trim that's gonna be below the upper landing. Our side fascia is all installed. Both sides are finished. So now we can go ahead and lay our stair treads in, and then our last piece of fascia will go on the front of that, and then that step will be complete. And then we just repeat ourselves over and over and over to get to the top. It's a simple measurement across. Usually all the stairs are close to the same, but we might double check things as we go. We make them nice and snug, and they're easy to drop in. Instead of doing all this mitered stuff on our stair treads, we go ahead and just run everything and butt it right into the sides of the fascia. One down, 7 more to go, and then this part of the stair set is complete, and then we'll move on down the way. After 35 years, that's the process. Once you understand the order and the technique, the rest is just repetition. If you want to see another detail that takes a deck from good to professional, my picture frame border video is linked below.